We're back. Here we go. Episode 4. City on a Hill. It's been a while.
It has been.
We're just gonna acknowledge the fact that life's been lifing.
Sure.
And we've been gone, but we're not. It was a hiatus.
Yeah.
Not permanent.
Very short one.
Temporary
compared to most people. So.
And we're back.
Absolutely.
Back on your TV screens. Back in your AirPod Pros.
Yeah.
Wherever you're listening to us, watching us. But my name is George.
My name is Marcus.
Come on, somebody.
I'm Steven.
And Sit on the Hill podcast. If you're new, we are a group of what? How would you describe us? We're just. I'm just a guy.
That's a dangerous
Yeah,
path.
dude, there's so many things.
Come on, talk about yourself. If you don't do it, I'll do it.
We've already done this.
Nah, I would love to hear you do it for real. I kind of want to know what
We have some of the most remarkable, influential, talented, not only church creatives, but church leadership gurus.
Are they on after this?
In this room.
Yeah, when did
right
they
now?
do it?
Right now.
Okay.
Dang, now I sound super self-centered. You just
who-
gave me that
Who
crazy
have
intro.
experience not only creating excellent things, but leading great teams. Which is why this podcast exists. It's because we want to be able to help facilitate that and just have conversations about it. Because I think these are all things that we all care about. I've been in ministry I just did the math.
No, don't do that.
14 years.
Yeah.
Vocationally for 14 years.
Yeah.
I know you've been in a long time.
Yeah. I think we're coming up on that second decade.
Come on now.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that for you.
Yeah.
And you've been doing vocational ministry for
Vocationally, 7 years.
7 years.
But we've been in church.
You've been in church
forever.
Yeah.
Forever. So.
And so I think our heart again in this. We'll reiterate this. We love the local church.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are not. We did not create this platform to speak down on.
Oh, not.
Sow division, bitterness, any of those different things about the church, but really our heart in wanting to see the church continue to thrive and grow and get better in spaces where creatives, whether that's from a artistic kind of visual background, worship, production, all those different spaces, where those spaces and pastoral leadership executives, where those worlds meet, we want to create more healthy conversations and platforms and resources. And so that's what this podcast is all about. We're just talking about things that we've experienced, things that we've heard other people talk about, or just come to us with, and we want to create healthy outlets. Yeah. So I think healthy outlets and healthy places to have discussions and learn is really essential. And I think we all, when we started this, had the same feeling of there wasn't enough of these type of conversations.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's really the heart of this. In our last episode, we talked about money, which, can always be a little bit touchy, but was great.
Yeah.
And I think kind of off the heels of that conversation, I think whenever we talk about money, there's always two correlations with money. There's a correlation with money, but there's also a correlation with expectations.
Mm-hmm.
When you're paying someone, whether you realize or not, you have an expectation of what it's a transaction, I'm giving you a paycheck, and so I'm expecting something in return. Yeah. And I think where there's been a lot of maybe frustration is as executives have hired staff, there's maybe just been a miss of expectations. But then on the other side, from the creative standpoint, there's maybe a lack of understanding of what those expectations mean, what that what causes on the team, what that costs the team. And so I think that's a great place to kind of move our conversation after money, is just talking through expectations in the church, what pastors maybe don't understand, what creatives maybe don't understand, and where they're maybe just missing each other.
Yeah. I feel like it's a time thing. Most of the things that we do in the creative world aren't things that just appear out of nowhere. Right. There's a lot of time to, from a video standpoint, like plan what you're going to shoot, then shoot it, then edit it, then get feedback. That it takes a long time to get those things through the entirety of the process. And I think a lot of times where I've seen a lot of the hiccups come is where the expectation is like, oh, well, you can just change this really quick, or you could just do this really quick, or we could just have a volunteer do this really quick. Right. And I think it's that moment where an executive realizes how much time it takes to do the little things. I feel like that could change the course of like so many different teams and so many different staffs if there was an understanding. And again, we're not here to create dissension there. I think we're there to help you guys who are watching this podcast have those conversations with your executive pastor or your lead pastor and say, hey, here's what it's actually going to cost money-wise for sure, but also time-wise, people-wise. I think there's so many different aspects of it that we could dive into, but I think that's usually, at least in my own experience, where I've seen most of the rub is the incorrect understanding of the amount of time it takes to get something done.
So piggybacking off that,
Yeah.
so I think oftentimes we think of time as just like lead time, but inevitably in a lot of churches it's like, how many hats do you wear within your church?
Sure.
So there's that realization that for the vast majority of people working in a church, you're not just dedicated to one thing. And so you have to add on just that much more, because it's not that you just get to have that work week dedicated to just creating this one awesome thing. You've got 7 other things that you've got to take care of.
For sure.
And so we just have to be aware of that, of like, that like this would be challenging in a full-time job just to this situation, but the fact that I've also got to take on this ministry, that ministry, it just makes it very, very challenging in that time sequence.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and also too, churches are notorious, and every church context is different. So I don't want to make blanket statements, but if things are coming in last minute, or at a certain not enough time to give the creative time to think and create an idea and kind of like think of new concepts, as well as problem solve everything else that's going on, and all the things that are kind of on top of their kind of plate. It does. And like the church is different than a lot of spaces where there's a cycle that is perpetual of you have your weekend services, or midweek, or whatever else is going on in your church life. There is a lot of like you said, other responsibilities, but there's also a cycle that isn't necessarily always conducive for creatives, because it's like, as soon as you put out this thing, there's something else coming down the pipe.
Absolutely.
And so, and again, that's a job. And so there's understanding of that, but also that creates certain deficiencies, I would say, that over time, I think play out to even lack of efficiency, or, like I think creatives need different things than maybe someone who's in an admin role. The people who are in admin roles and how God's made them, how they're wired, man, they love regiment and systems. They can do the same thing over and over again, and that never gets mundane or boring to them. Yeah. Creatives are not made that way. Yeah. And so one of the reasons why creatives are the way they are is they like to explore and do things and try new things and all different stuff. But there's like I said, there's a time crunch of what needs to be done, maybe not understanding of that. And then there's also just I think just kind of a cycle that I think kind of creates an interesting frustration, I think, amongst most creatives.
But I think you can pop into the lead time conversation to solve some of that. And as an organization or a church, if you are ahead of what you're hoping to do, it gives the creative that space to explore and really ideate on what's going to tell the story of whatever event you're doing or whatever testimony you're trying to capture. I think a lot of times we get to the last minute thing and someone's got a really great idea, but then it puts all of the pressure on that creative to be like, okay, go make this big vision happen in 48 hours or, a week. And, there's, in order to make something excellent, there's time that's needed in that as well. And so I think solving that issue, this is like the most elementary version of solving the issue, but like plan better. You know what I mean? Like think ahead as a church and say, what do we want to do this year to capture the story of what God is doing on our campus, in our city, whatever it may be. And then allow your creatives to speak into like, oh, well, what would be a great idea here, like 3 months from now. And we could already start to put a plan together for what that looks like. I can get people here 100%. That if we got to fly somebody out, there's a way to do that now. I feel like there's just so much more at your disposal with that extra time. If we just do a better job as the church of thinking ahead.
For sure.
Yeah, and obviously there's an extreme of that where you can go too far.
Sure.
Of where you never allow for the freedom of a last minute good idea. But
Right.
I think the system that you're talking about actually allows you to accomplish those things.
I agree. Yeah.
Because if you're building in a schedule that allows you to be on top of things, I think we forget that like a church, it's crazy how often, like think about every week the amount of deadlines you have.
Man.
Like over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So it actually is incredibly difficult to create that space,
Yeah.
to have that extra time. So if you're not intentional, it just isn't going to happen.
Right.
But yeah, so I love what you're talking about there. Of if you create those systems, it actually allows for when those great ideas come, that you actually can meet those needs in those times because you've built a system that allows for that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're constantly acting from desperation, you're just either not going to be able to get it, or it's never going to be at a level of what it could be, which is just unfortunate.
Yeah, I think a friend of mine called it proactive ministry instead of reactive ministry, right? Like we want to be proactive to allow for the space. We talk about this in worship, right? We want to allow God to move through our worship sets, through our services. But if we're not planning to create space in those services, God is capable of doing whatever he wants, and he can move in spite of us if he decides to, but we want to do things alongside him. And so how can we intentionally create that space in a worship set? Same thing with your organization as a whole, or your church as a whole. How can we create space for creativity and ideation and like really fun thought exercises where we can get all of these different minds and voices in the room? It's hard to do that on like a real short time frame. But I love what you said, because I think at times, because I am a little bit more of a forward thinker, I can forget about, or I can almost dismiss the like short term, like we just thought of this today. Because I'm like, I try to like really care about my people, and sometimes that's like to a detriment to my team, because they do need to learn malleability and like can you do like in the moment, you know what I mean? That's important too. But I think what you said is so beautiful, man. Like if you plan ahead, you're creating margin for those moments, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and I think there's ways that you can listen to your team. Of like, I know for us in our team, we just found a lot of people are saying, hey, in the morning I find that I have the most energy to take on some of those things. So we've kind of made it a rule of like, we try to avoid morning meetings to give people the space to have time to, if they're able to create that space for themselves so that's been huge for us.
Great.
So finding ways of communicating with your team of just how can you set them up for their best success? And it's diving into the weeds and learning some of those things, but it's really, really worth it.
Yeah, man.
That's great. I want to take a step back and kind of thinking through, like, I think again, every church is different. There's small churches, very large churches. There's all type of different church contexts. I think when we're talking about creative, whether it's from a worship background, creative production, there's I think if we're honest, most people, most churches, most leads are looking at someone or something and be like, oh, I want to try and emulate this. I want to try and do this, right? Or it may not, and I even mean that like in a bad comparison point, but we just look at, we're following other trend centers and we're like, man, this is cool. We want to try and make this stuff happen. Or maybe it's not even a church. Maybe it's, maybe another brand or whatever the case is. And so I think like kind of looking at how much the church and media as a whole has changed. I think when you look at like leaders who've come up, and maybe the way, if you started pastoring maybe 10, 15 years ago, what you thought about the creative space, what you thought about what churches did in the creative space or worship space, or, what Sundays sound like or what it sounds like online, what your context of what it sounded like 10, 15 years ago to what's happening, what's changed now, so different, right? Technology and innovation is moving at such a rapid pace. Even the things that I learned and was teaching to my team 5 years ago doesn't, like, a lot of those things are gone, right? Or they've changed in a lot of big ways. So I think it's good for leads and executives to even, this is where I think trust for your team is important, because most of those people are really in tune and in touch with what's going on. But also, like, for a lead to maybe be humble enough to understand or to accept that maybe some of my preconceived or some of my like thoughts about creative spaces have changed and they're outdated.
Mm.
And I think like looking at, I mean, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok are platforms that have changed so dramatically.
Sure.
Again, in the last 5-10 years, worship,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I just had we were just having a talk with my team, and we're talking about some stuff we want to do, and it was like, man, I remember when 10 years ago, X band was like seen as the band, and you listen to like what they made 10 years ago, I'm like, oh, that probably wouldn't fly at all today.
Yeah.
Like you had this big kind of concert, really, it was highly produced, but it was like very like, it was very like studio driven, these concert vibes.
Yeah.
Whereas now we've had this swing of still very high excellence and quality, but you have more of these kind of raw in the room kind of moments that drive a lot of
Intimate
stuff.
moments,
Intimate moments, right? So things have changed in that space. Live stream has changed a bunch of things. I mean, what are some things that you guys even look in your own context of like things that since you guys have been doing, you've noticed big major changes in?
Yeah. I think in the worship space, there's been a shift, and maybe it's just the generation. They're looking for something a little bit more authentic.
Yeah.
And so in the songs that are sung, the atmosphere that's created, I don't think they necessarily want the like dark room, I can't see anyone, I can't hear anyone else vibe anymore. I think there's more of a yearning to like be truly in the communal space of worship and hearing other people's voices and feeding off of other people's testimonies and saying like, man, if I saw that in someone else's life, like it encourages me to respond similarly. I think that's been a through line throughout, human existence. But coming out of COVID and people having to be in their houses for like essentially 2 years by themselves with no human interaction, I think we all came out and we were like, man, I just want to be around people and I want it to be authentic. I want it to be real. So I think the songs that are being written are a lot more about the human experience with God. And there's a lot of conversations with lead pastors and worship leaders where they're like, how do we still keep the focus and the attention on God and his holiness and who he is and what he's capable of, while also acknowledging that there are human beings in the room who like are crying out for God and they want to know him. And these songs that are being written are bridges in a sense from the human experience to like to God himself. And I add a lot of like the generational gap can like be a big conversation there, because if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, you're like, I'm only singing about God, to God. It's got nothing to do with me and what I can do. But a lot of these like 18, 19, 20-year-olds are like, but this is literally my experience with him. I'm writing my testimony. I'm singing my testimony. And there's a bridging of the gap that needs to happen, and not just a bridging of the creative gap, but the generational gap to help the younger songwriters and the younger leaders understand that there's a reverence and like a holy fear we need to have. But there's also helping the older generation know like that personal relationship that you have with God was actually the intent the whole time, right? God wants to know you and he wants you to know him. And so writing those songs is a beautiful thing. How do we meld that into a congregational atmosphere? That's a journey. That's conversation. That's trust. That's all the stuff we've been talking about. So I think it's an interesting conversation. And I think like anything else, there's tact that has to be in those conversations. There's a lack of offense that has to be in those conversations. As creatives, it's real easy for us when we pour our heart into something to like hear. It's hard for us to hear someone be like, I don't know about that. You know what I mean? Or I have questions about that. And you're like, but I just literally gave my heart and soul to this stanza here. Don't talk to me about that. So I think it's important that those conversations are happening and that there's a coming together in those conversations, not to convince one to the other, but to meet in the middle and say, how can we take the best of both of these things and make something great out of them?
There's also a challenge in that, like you talked about authenticity in the age where we have multi-sites, venues, multiple service times. So you have to be authentic within a time frame, which is a challenge. And something like I know everybody wrestles with that. So that's, again, just good conversations, good planning. Again, planning is so huge. But that is something that I think can sometimes get lost in translation, where sometimes the worship leader is not considered as much of, like, it's tough for them to hit those marks sometimes because they don't have that freedom. So figuring out ways of, like, how can you still give them the outlet to shepherd the people within their context, and from their side still work within a framework that works with everything else going on. Because it's a challenge of, like, you have to hit your mark. Like, I have to hit my 15 minutes because I know the venue's relying on us to get to the sermon. Otherwise they have dead space, and I have someone else who has to make up for the thing that I'm now doing. So all these things affect each other. And I would say that's probably one of the things, I don't know if the last 10 years, but it's something that early church was definitely not dealing with in the same way. And it's a different wrinkle on how do we do ministry well in this new context, particularly when we have people who are crying out for authenticity. It's a challenge. Yeah, so I definitely don't have all the answers in that, other than I think good planning and good conversation is a great place to start. And while we're using technology to bridge all these things together, we don't have to overly rely on it. I think that's one of the ways that you can make it. It doesn't have to be flashy. Sometimes, like, if something's getting in the way and becoming the thing, then I think it becomes a problem. In the end, all these things should be, we're doing the best job we can to get out of the way of the overall message that we're trying to send. So that should be, I think, the ultimate vision in that.
That's good. And I think, too, like, to kind of bridge both of those thoughts, I think what's so interesting, again, in the last, 10, 15 years or whatever, is that the church, in a lot of ways, has become so much more, and I don't mean this as a dig, but kind of more complicated, in the sense that, like, there's so many things that are happening from, just from a week-to-week kind of basis of your normal church functions of, again, the services. I think because of, just the rise of internet and people by and large are kind of judging services differently than maybe they were before. So there's so much more hyper awareness of the quality of your service from a production standpoint to the worship standpoint, your transitions, how we even sound online, right? Like, that's a whole different now concept. Most people weren't thinking about 10 years ago, unless you were like a mega church. You weren't thinking about that if you're a church of 600-700, but now you are. You're thinking about that kind of stuff. You're thinking about, your creative is thinking about branding and Instagram. And I was just, when you were talking, I was thinking about, I remember when before it was Reels, I remember the day we were at our last church. I remember when it was called IGTV came out, and it was like this, and I was like, what is this, right? And, like, it was this whole thing of, like, posting videos, like, I don't know, you know what I mean? And now people think about posting as a church 2, 3, 4 times a day. You're thinking again, and you're not even posting. It's our branding and then events, and again our services. And now we're in a space where churches are wanting to push and do more original content, whether it's music and stuff that we're writing, or just video content and stories and testimonies and so many different things. And so the frequency and the output of churches, for the most part, has changed. For growing churches, that's changed. The complexity of how to do that and how to do that well has changed. There's been such a big push on, as a creative or just in any role that you're in, you're not just creating, but you want to raise up leaders. So now it's like, okay, so now you're like you're a director, but then you're also a trainer of people. And again, we're doing that on a consistent basis. And you're creating more videos, more designs, more songs, more services, whatever the case is. You're doing that more and more and more at a level. You're trying to meet an expectations level of quality and excellence, because you want to have a good representation to the people who might show up to an event or a Sunday or wherever the case might be. And I think that, again, if you came into church 15 years ago, you could have a video department and 1 or 2 people could do it. And it was, like, simple.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It was like, oh yeah. Like, we're going to make this video, and, like, that video is going to be good for the whole month. It's like, no, people now, like, man, we got to be posting multiple videos and stuff a day. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much stuff happening to where even that context of the output and the frequency, and what people come to expect if they if they click on your video online
Totally
has changed.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think when you're in it, you don't realize it.
Yeah.
But I think if you kind of step back and you kind of look, I go back, I actually just did this. It was kind of a cringe. But I went back and looked at some of the videos that we made, 2017, 16, 17.
Yeah.
Videos in my head that I'm like, these videos were so good, And in that time, they were good.
Mhm.
But I look at them now and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, how much just technology and industry
Sure.
and expectations have changed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this was in my head. I'm like, this was just a little while ago.
Mm.
But that was, it's 6-7 years ago. And the gap and the expectation has changed so much. I look at some of the worship stuff that we did and I'm going, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like it's changed. Right. And so in my head, I'm like, man, we were innovative and out in the front. And then again, now I'm looking at that, I'm like, oh, that wouldn't even fly now. And, so if your team and your resources and your expectations hasn't changed with the times, then you could be getting an output and getting, results that, again, as maybe your lead or your executive isn't happy with.
Yeah.
But with changed expectations, you need new kind of, platforms and systems and stuff to uphold that.
I think you were talking earlier about being a teacher, essentially in the church. And I think we've been talking about expectations a lot. I think that's been a misunderstood expectation in the church. I've been lucky enough to have been teaching music since 2012. But I think in the church context, there's usually an expectation that if you're a worship pastor or maybe you're a music director, you're also a music teacher.
Right.
And
Totally different skill sets.
And I think and it's not that I don't think you shouldn't be growing your team. I think that's so important. You need to be teaching them fundamentals. You need to be teaching them the language that comes with how you communicate on stage during rehearsal, all of those things. But at the same time, there's most of the people that are on your volunteer team have like 9 to 5 jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're probably, depending on what church you're at, like I know at our church, we don't do a midweek rehearsal. Mm-hmm. Even if you do a midweek rehearsal, it's not time to like sit and walk them through, the number system or sit and walk them through scales or like chords and shapes and all these things and like the nuance that comes with those things. And so I think when we talk about expectations, at least in the worship world, expectations have to be met not just by the staff member, but it's kind of your job to encourage your team. You need to be hungry for knowledge within your field, right? Like if you're a musician, if you're a drummer, if you're a guitar player, it shouldn't be solely on me to be feeding you information, similar to what we tell our congregation on Sunday. Like if the pastor's the only one encouraging you to open up your Bible on Sunday and you don't do anything Monday through Saturday, your spiritual growth is going to be, you'll grow, but it'll be at such a slow pace. But if you are reading your word every single day, and by the time you get to Sunday, you're responding differently in service. And I think the same thing goes, and I can't necessarily speak to the different aspects of the creative world because I haven't been in them as much, but specifically with music, like it's something you have to like dive into regularly and know it like the back of your head. It's got to be like second nature to you. And I think that's where expectations can be missed at times, because if you're not having those conversations with your lead pastor and your executive pastor of like, hey, are you expecting me to be a music teacher right now? If so, when do we do that? Is it Tuesday when we have meetings all day, and then Wednesday when I'm with my interns that day, and I have a little bit of time to teach them, but there's still like prep that needs to be done for the weekend. There's still pastoring that needs to be done for my team. I also would love to have a life and like see my family, so there's also like these things you want to balance at the same time.
It's also a specific skill set,
right?
Of running a worship team and teaching music are just not the same thing.
They're very different.
They're very different. And while they seem like, obviously they're in the same like sphere and field, they are two completely different skill sets. And so,
I would say that about any field. I think being the heart of a teacher and then being a creative.
Oh, for sure.
Are sometimes they work together. But those are generally I can look at someone and go, this is who you are. You generally are like, man, I love to create. Or some people are like, yeah, I like to create and I enjoy creating, but I also love teaching. Those are not the same
for sure.
people.
This is also a mistake we make across the board of we take talent and when you become super talented, you get thrust eventually into leadership, and that's not always the case because leadership itself is a specific skill, not necessarily the thing that you're doing.
Right.
And there can be situations, and this is difficult, but oftentimes you can be a really good leader and the people under you are way better at the thing, and that's okay. Like, thrive in the thing that you are good at.
Most leaders that I feel like I really look up to and respect are like that.
Yeah.
They're not looking to be the star player.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm happy being the coach.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is what they're good at.
That's what they're good at.
Yeah, 100%.
But we often, like to your point, sports analogy, but I remember I was talking about like Michael Jordan, some of those guys would be terrible coaches or terrible GMs. And I think generally that's true.
Michael Jordan is a terrible GM, just
to
clarify.
No doubt about it.
Love him for you, MJ.
But he is the GOAT. So we'll just...
we can have another podcast about that later.
For a different time.
But we often will take the star player and put them in a coach
100%.
role.
Yeah.
And we wonder why they struggle so often.
Yeah.
And I think to that, I mean, again, worship, creative, I think a lot of different departments and roles.
For sure.
That's also true.
I think we can also get caught up in our own thing. And so this is any role you're in. I think we lose the awe sometimes when something just happens all the time. So like you see your pastor go up and give the sermon every week and he's awesome and you're like, that's great. You're not looking at he went to school for a decade.
Right.
He's in the Word constantly.
Right.
He's getting these tools. Same thing for any discipline. And this applies like to everything. Technology, like we turn on this light. I have no idea how this light works. I don't know. I just know I flip a switch and it turned on.
Right.
And so we lose a little bit of the awe.
Right.
And like, it's so simple. It's like, no.
Yeah.
So I think we need to have a healthy curiosity with whatever anybody else is doing and have a respect of like, it takes a lot.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to come in whenever I'm going to deal with someone else with that of like, hey, I don't understand this. So can you help
me understand?
Yeah, help me figure out what I don't know. Right. And if I'm asking something that's off base, like let's just have a conversation about what is a realistic expectation.
And I love that we went here because for me, the whole concept about kind of being the thrust in leadership was something I struggled with a lot into my early years. Not to say that I was super talented, but like early on when I came on the scene, the church we were at and was also making a lot of rad videos, I was thrust into leadership and like leading a team. And I actually was like very frustrated with that for a long season because I was like, hey, I started doing this because I wanted to make videos, not because I was trying to corral a bunch of people to like do their jobs, which was essentially like what my role turned into. I remember my first few years, I mean, I was making videos every single week. And I remember my last 2 years there, I remember thinking like, I rarely make videos now.
Yeah.
I really, and again, it was that I had to like die. There's a part of me that I had to like sacrifice and let die of like, hey, my job is to make sure this team is producing a lot of great videos. But that means for me, there's a lot of videos that I would give to other people to lead. I was like, I want to make that video. I think I could do that video better. But it wasn't about me in that season. And that's fine. If you're willing to do that role, that's fine.
Totally.
But I do think that we thrust people into that role that's not what they're good at. And you're creating that's not sustainable for them.
Yeah.
You're going to work them out of your church, out of your department because they're like, hey, I want to make videos, and you're talking about me running a volunteer team or training up interns, and that's not even what they're good at, or that's not what they signed up for.
Yeah.
You also gotta accept, and creatives, this just happens all the time. That there's gonna be seasons, so you got to be able to ebb and flow. Of like when we first started, like the amount of camps you do on the video side of things and on the worship side of things,
right?
Again, they're awesome,
right? And
then you get married, you have kids, and you have to figure it out. Of like, is this? And so those are conversations you have to have.
Yeah.
Of like you have to adapt together and figure out what that looks like because realistically, in a bigger church, I mean, the church we were at, there was like 16 different youth ministries.
Yes.
So 16 summer camps.
Yes.
Like you're gonna send.
Yeah.
So you got to have those conversations, and figure out, okay, what is the North Star here?
Right.
What are ways that we can put people around, and hopefully you're having that conversation of what's the best way that I can do my job well, but also priority number one's got to be family.
For sure. And I think too, not to switch, but we were talking about just kind of the like, again, how things have changed, kind of like that thought of like, I remember, because I went back and looked at a bunch of our old videos, but what was funny to me was like, when I started with the team, most of the team, but before you came, most of the team was like under 21.
Oh gosh.
They were
so
super young,
yeah.
right? But it was funny because a lot of those videos that we were kind of making maybe around 2015, 2016, again, the internet, we weren't, at least the church wasn't that plugged into what was happening online.
Sure.
So I would give cameras to like, kind of high schoolers, and they would shoot stuff, and like they didn't have the technical skills yet. It was kind of raw. But at that time it was like, oh my gosh, this is so creative, so innovative, so cool. But I looked at it now. I went back and looked at those videos now, and I'm like, oh, none of that would fly now. But it was because now an audience that is watching is so much more used to, Netflix, TikToks, YouTube. Like we're used to seeing so much, video content that the stuff that 10 years ago seemed so like kind of cool and innovative, even if it was like just kind of like raw or whatever. Now if I gave a camera to someone who was untrained, immediately everyone would see it and feel it.
Yeah.
So now the expectation for someone to be on a team is like to volunteer or whatever, or whatever the case might be. You have to have training because the expectation of the audience has changed again with time.
Sure.
What now you expect in 2025 when you turn on TikTok or YouTube or whatever is different than what it was in 2015. So I think those things are interesting. And so I think again, when you start talking about volunteers or interns or people that you want to raise up, the bar has changed.
Yeah.
And that's so like, again, I just don't know if everyone is aware of that until you see it on your feed, and then you're like, what's happening here?
Yeah. I feel like the growth of technology has been like anything else. It's got its good and its bad.
Sure.
In the good, everything is more accessible now from a music perspective. Like if you got a laptop, you could, in a sense, put together a whole album.
That's right.
You could run backing tracks at your church.
Yeah.
You could do so many things that 20 years ago you would have had you needed a whole rig to do that.
Right.
But at the same time, I think we've underestimated as it's grown that the expertise still needs to be at the top to help make that thing. That's still much easier. Like on your iPhone now, you can take really high quality video.
Right.
But you still need someone to train you how to take that high quality video. Sure, you can get great, like you can go between 24 frames and like you do whatever you want.
Or you can do it accidentally once.
Right.
But to build something sustainably, you don't just luck in. Like the viral moment has changed. I remember just talking to Jeff about this.
Yes.
The viral moment has changed.
Yes.
We used to chase a viral moment because if you got viral, then everyone was going to like, you know what I mean, follow you, you're going to make it.
Yep.
You can go viral now, and your next video, no one cares about
and
it.
be forgotten the next day.
So to build something sustainably great, whether it's in worship or creative, whatever, you have to have the expertise at the top.
Yes.
We're not just chasing a one-time moment, but we're building how to make good stories, how to make good music, production, have great services, and we can do that consistently, not just one time.
And I wanted to speak to your earlier point about putting creatives in spaces where maybe they aren't necessarily thrilled to be doing the thing they're asked to be doing. I think it's so important. Lead pastor, executive pastor, if you're watching, you have got to have more conversations with the people that you have leading those creative teams, and make sure you're asking them like, hey, what are you doing to like fuel yourself to be able to come back and do the things you don't like to do? Because let's be honest, like as you get older, you're going to have to do things you don't like to do.
Right.
Ask me how many meetings I have to sit in that I don't want to sit in. You know what I mean? But it doesn't change the fact that if I'm fueling myself outside of that, whether it be through my relationships or doing the thing that you love, shooting video and like creating the thing that like gets your heartbeat pumping, like you're doing the thing you're excited about, then it gives you more ability to go and teach somebody. Because you're so hyped on it. You're like, dude, I got to tell somebody about this. Bro, you got to watch how I edited this thing. You got to watch how I took this track from over here and I made it. Like you have more like brain power to do it when you're not drained from doing.
Well, creatives by and large are filled up from passion.
Yes.
So what they're doing, if they're what they're doing, they're not passionate about. And again, we're not saying that you do your job.
Yes.
Be faithful in things, that even if they're not right. But you can feel a difference for a creative in any field, whether it's worship, music, creative, video design. You can feel a difference when they're filled with passion versus they're working out of obligation.
Yep.
And you're just gonna get a different result, and your ministry and your team are gonna feel the results of those two different people.
Yeah, I think if you're doing too much as a team or as a church, it can stop you from being able to fuel the individual teams to go and like take the hill. Mm-hmm. If you're like at every moment, you're like, we should start something new, or we should do this new creative thing, or what about this? Like every time an idea pops in your head, you're like, we're implementing it today. Yeah. It's like, maybe hold off. And I think that's why it's so important that as leaders and as executives, we all are like seeking God in this thing first and not seeking our own like selfish desires, because there can be so many things that pop into your head that are good ideas.
They're good ideas,
but maybe they're not for this season. You know what I mean? And I think when you do less and you do less really, really well, God then blesses the people who have done great with little, because he can trust them with much. Right. So like, don't feel like you got to go take the entirety of the hill week one. You know what I mean? Allow for God to move through your team like in his timing. And like allow him to grow your skill as a leader, grow their skill as people who get to serve with you and alongside you. And then just watch and see how God will open up doors for you to do bigger and better things. And you won't get to the end of it and be like, man, I'm drained. I'm tired. I don't feel like I have the ability to keep doing this. You're like, we could do more.
Right.
And guess what? Like people will start to come around that. I heard someone say a long time ago, I might be misquoting it, but they said most people don't want to be a part of building something. They want to come alongside something that's already established.
Yes.
Yeah. So there are people out there who are like, I'm down to be on the ground floor. Love those people. For those people, you need those people in your organization. But from a volunteer standpoint, as a worship leader, it's way harder for me to get a guitar player who's going to be like, who just rips, if we don't have the foundation of like, we communicate using the number system. We know how to mix our in-ears well.
Or even you get a person like that and then they don't stick.
Yes, because there's nothing to keep them there. And that doesn't mean everything is about making like that one person stick. There's got to be a sense of like, hey, I'm in with the team and I'm malleable when things don't go great. But if every time the experience is like, man, this is rough, it's hard to keep people with the gifting and the talent, because they're like, well, I could essentially go somewhere else. And let's take it out of like the individual church. Like I could go outside of the capital C church, go do this as a professional, and they're taking care of me.
I say this all the time. Gifted people, talented people don't normally stay around dysfunction for long. And so sometimes I've had this fear, like people have really creative around the church, and I get sometimes scared to invite them into things because I'm like, hey, I know because of how gifted and talented you are, you might do something for a favor to me. Like I have a lot of relationships with people. I'm like, hey man, you do this for me. Okay, cool. People will do that for a season, but after a while, people who are really talented, they're like, hey man, this is a lot.
Yeah. I'm
and
good.
I know guys who are like, hey man, I love the church, but just keep me out of that. Man, because you know what I mean?
Or when y'all get that figured out, call me back.
For sure. And like talented people, like I don't think you realize, you know what I mean? Like, and I think most people don't realize that is a real, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
And if it's your church, especially as a pastor and executive, it's like the ugly baby syndrome. You ever like someone's like, look at my baby, and you look at them, and you're like, yeah, listen, that's your baby. But like, you know what I mean? But like when it's your church, you don't see that. You just, why wouldn't someone serve? Why wouldn't someone do this? And it's like, yes, but there's real consequences for people when they're in the space and it's not maybe ready for it. You know what I mean? And so, I think those are really good conversations to have and real good expectations to be clear on of like where are we really at right now? And we have dreams and aspirations. Cool. How do we build effectively and sustainably towards those without trying to eat the whole apple in one bite?
Yeah, man.
Like, because that's how you choke.
Yeah, there's great things accessible to you at whatever stage of church growth you're at. You could do amazing things at a church of 200 or a church of 2,000 or 20,000. The size doesn't matter. Right. The intentionality behind everything is so important. If you do things well at small sizes, when you get to the big size, you have the mentality of, we have always done things really well. Yeah. So being up here doesn't change anything for me. Mm-hmm. Excellence is still a priority, but also at this small level, you learn how to do relationships really well too. Really and then when you get to 20,000, that doesn't change. That's where the money is right there. And by money, I don't mean like literal cash. I mean like momentum for your teams. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That's good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so we talk a lot about, okay, things are changing, right? And we're kind of acknowledging how the needs for creative teams, worship production teams have changed. The expectations have changed over these last, whatever the case is. Where, practically, where do we see the church as an organization needs to get better to help equip and help, fund these these dreams that a lot of times creatives and pastors have, right? So
you need honest assessments. The thing that comes to mind is you're going to buy a house. You have a certain budget. You have a certain down payment that you got, and so we can get a foundation, we're going to build towards something, but depending on the amount that you have in the area that you have, it's I can either choose the location, I can choose the size of the house, I can choose whether I have a pool or a backyard. Right. So understanding what those things are, and so that's where you just have to have that conversation with your creative, with your pastor, of okay, if this is the budget, this is what we can do in each of these areas. What are our priorities? We can get a different version that's a little bit less for this. And so you have to make those assessments and then just understand that that's the world that you live in for that time period. It can obviously change as resources change, but then you have that expectation set, and there shouldn't be that disappointment. It's this is what we can do right now with the resources that we do have.
I think there's a lot of different philosophies in how to attain success or get to the end goal. I think it's important that, I don't want to say this wrong, growing isn't everything to me. I think it's important to grow in number. I think growing in your skill is always important. Growing in number or growing in popularity should not be the goal. It shouldn't be man, we want to get more followers, or we want yes, more people seeing what your church is doing is essentially more people hearing the gospel, and we want that, we're for that. But I think a lot of times we can get distracted by it's got to be bigger, it's got to be better. So you go get the biggest, most expensive soundboard and the craziest sound system, but you don't got the person to run it.
Right.
And so sometimes we could get out of order in the process. I fully believe affording starts with getting the right people in place first, because they will be able to build trust with a lead pastor and an executive pastor to say, hey, if we're buying this thing, it's going to be a worthy investment for our church. Right. And then it's so important for us as creatives to make sure we are not leading our church astray, and we are not just going and buying the shiniest thing because those YouTube ads be talking to us. You know what I mean? Right. But
totally, yeah. I think that is so big of people over tools.
Yes.
For that of I think oftentimes you can think, well, we got this really awesome thing. Why if it's a camera, why doesn't this look good? Well, it's you don't have someone to run it. It doesn't run itself.
Yeah. Right.
The electric guitarist has this new guitar. It doesn't sound good. It's the guy we have playing, unfortunately, he's not very good.
He doesn't know how to play it.
Yeah. So it's those conversations of, yes, we need to make sure the right people are in the right places first.
Yes.
And then everything is just a tool, because again, you have the right person, they're going to take whatever you have and they're going to maximize it. And then you can have that real conversation of hey, we've maxed out because I'm using this tool as far as it can go.
Right.
But if you don't have the people, the tool doesn't get used in that way.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then And I've seen that happen. So then what happens is the lead, the pastor, whoever, then loses trust. And so the next time you ask for something, they're like, "Well, no, because
Last
it
time.
didn't. Yeah, it didn't.
Yeah.
Right, we didn't get the
Totally.
results." And it's a weird, perpetual loop.
Yeah.
I think like thinking through again, kind of the areas, and I'll just kind of summarize, and you guys can let me know if there's things that you would add or things you want to, whatever, disagree with. But the areas I think where the church hasn't kept up is we've talked about budget. So I think budget and paying staff, but then also in budget and like what it takes to maybe do a video project or
Right,
a sound production or whatever. So it's budgets, staffing, and really investing in the staff, investing in the people, whether that's paid staff, volunteers, interns, like investing in the people. Systems. Well, again, I think we're just using kind of outdated systems or outdated playbooks and that type of stuff. And then again, like leadership expectations. And so I think those are areas where the church hasn't maybe caught up, and I think that maybe is affecting the results that we're seeing. Are there any others that you guys would say that you think are really important when it comes to like the church needs to be more intentional in these areas as that they affect the results?
I think we've talked about this in past times of just not every church is striving for excellence. I mean, it's like that baseline of sometimes it's like, well, it's church.
Yeah.
Whereas like, man, it should be the opposite of where, man, I want to do this for God, and so therefore I want to do it the best I possibly can.
Yeah.
So I think changing that mindset that the Christian church world isn't second best. Like it isn't.
Come on.
It isn't the ugly stepchild. It is like this is our best foot forward, and we want the people that are leading the industry to become. We want them coming from our churches.
That's
like
right.
that would be
That's
the
right.
dream.
Yes.
I mean, ultimately, that's what we're trying to influence here. Is to inspire those people of like, hey, like go out in the world and do it, but also do it within the context of church too. Like it's a both and.
Right.
But but we need to change that philosophy within the church that we make that scapegoat argument of like it can be worse because of that. No.
Yeah.
I think at times the church has been afraid to acknowledge that there are some things in the secular context that are being done better.
Sure.
And we are like, well, we're the church, and like we can't even look at that and say that that's correct when there's actually things that I fully believe God can redeem in his house if we're actually doing them well.
Totally.
And we're taking some of the practices that we're learning in the secular world and saying, okay, maybe we don't want to take advantage of people and step over people like they're doing it out there.
Look at the influence.
But look at the influence we could have if we just got more organized and we took this more seriously and we stopped acting like because it's for God, it has to be second rate.
Yeah.
Because it's for God and because we're representing God, it should be everything we have. It should be the best we have.
Yeah.
Why would I sing differently outside of the church? I can sing beautifully there, but I need to be like more subdued in the church when God put this gift inside of me for people to see and give him glory. Why would I do less? There is a point to distracting people and making it about myself, which I preach never to do.
Right.
But I'm not going to allow for mediocrity as a mask for people being distracted or, entertained. You can be, some of the most beautiful songs have been written in the church and no one bats an eye.
Right.
But if you do too many runs or maybe that worship set goes a little bit too long, it's about you.
Right.
And it's like, I don't always think that's necessarily the case.
So I think what's interesting, and maybe, I don't know, maybe this is like a part 2 of this conversation, but like, I think what's interesting is I think most people like cognitively understand what we just said of like, and there are some churches I think that have that like, that low bar, but I think a lot of the, especially a lot of younger guys are coming into leadership now. They have this high bar of excellence, right? So many churches have excellence. So this is our thing, which is great. What I think the bridge where we've come to though is to say we want excellence in all these areas, where it's songwriting, creating videos, our services, and then we look at the world. What we see is that they invest money, They invest
time,
the resource, you know what I mean? I do a lot of freelance work outside of the church.
Yeah.
I get to work with some like agencies. I work with this agency here. They're great. But man, I go to the thing and they make videos for, brands, all this stuff. Man, they pay their writers. They have a camera operator. They have an AC. They have people who go they pay people who just go pick up people from the airport and just hospitality, right? There's so many and they're paying money to their people and they're getting the results.
Mm-hmm.
They again, you look at music, man, and again, you can have someone who writes on a laptop and it's great and it comes out, it goes viral. That happens. But most times, man, you go to a studio, when they got the engineer, they got all those different things. They're paying for the equipment. They're doing all the different things. They're investing into the people and the equipment, and they get the results. Yeah. We then look at the church and go, well, we want the same result, but we don't want to do the same process. And so it's, you ever watch we love going to movies. I mean, sure. You ever sit there and watch the credits at the end? You're like, good God, long. How many names is on?
Real long.
How many names is on here? That's what takes people off a movie.
Yes. And it's for the minuscule things, like the crawl that you're watching at the end of the movie.
Yes.
Somebody did that.
Someone did.
Someone got paid to put their time in for that thing.
And to try and copy the result but not the process in the church, to me, is, I think, the kind of the bridge that we're at is that I think a lot of people are frustrated and going, we want to raise the bar in the church, but we want you to do it for less money. You're gonna try and rope people into do it for free. Mm-hmm. You're gonna do all these different things, but we want to change the world.
Right.
And I'm not saying that God can't do it, but I am saying that's a miracle. We're talking about miracles now.
And I don't think God intended for it to be at the detriment of people's livelihoods,
because that's not sustainable.
Right.
And what kills me, again, I don't want to name names, but there are certain ministries and things, because I've been in it for a while, that I've watched and I'll see them come to the top. Mm-hmm. Oh man, would love to do love. Man, I would go work for them, and then 3 years later they're gone. Mm-hmm. And someone-so has left, or someone-so has left the church. Someone-so is bitter, or they just, they go on tour with someone. Yeah. And it doesn't, in a lot of those spaces I've learned is that they struck gold for a season. Man, God was moving, God was working, but they didn't have a sustainable model. Mm-hmm. And so even that season that they were in where things were rocking and rolling, they weren't able to sustain that for an extended period of time. Yeah. Which I don't think that's the goal. The goal isn't just to make rad things for a short season. Right. The goal is that the church, the Big C church, and your local church context, where you're planted, where God has you, you're able to move on mission for what God has for you, and that's not just a flash in the pan.
I think one of the biggest issues with this is individual churches feel like they've got to take on the full burden of being a production house, a writing house, a creative house as a whole. They got to have the best preachers. They got to have the best kids ministry. They got to have the best everything. And I think we kind of covered this in one of our first episodes, but I think some of those things are meant to come out of the capital C church.
Sure.
Because not every church we're out here in California, so not every church has the budget of a Saddleback or, the big churches that come to mind, right? Sure. You go out to Elevation and they got a full studio ready, and they got multiple rooms where people are writing, and you're looking at that like, okay, we got to go recreate that at your church of 250. It's okay that that's not you.
For sure.
But I think it's important that in the local church context, those houses all come together and say, what is the sound of our city?
Totally.
And how do we all, instead of expecting just my church or just your church or just your church to come out with the songs of the city, how do we all come together and say, what has God been speaking to our houses as individuals, and how do we support one another?
That's good.
Maybe we all go in together on this big project and we do something and we see how God blesses that. When it stops being about individual houses and it starts being about the church and God's bride as a whole, then I think the church will start to see more success in those things, because you as a lead pastor are not thinking, how am I supposed to spend $150,000 on this project when, we got to keep the lights on.
Yeah. Totally.
It's awareness, man.
Yeah.
Because if you are going to be that, it's either if you feel like, man, songwriting or whatever the thing.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the thing, then you gotta understand what it takes to pull it off.
Right.
And you have to have an awareness of like, if that's not us, again, for the season, whether maybe it's just resources,
Yeah.
okay, then that's
Yeah.
not us.
Yeah.
Or again, if that is us, you have the awareness of, hey, we're
Yeah.
as a team, as a church, man, we're making sacrifices. We're making,
we're going to invest
pivoting
in this
because
Yeah.
we believe God has called us to this
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
most, like, this is a whole different episode, but most leaders and or churches struggle with awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And
they'll sacrifice excellence just to say I did the thing.
Right.
And that's not okay.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Yeah. And I think, again, to bring this whole point home, I think why this conversation is really important to have is because if you don't have this conversation, if you're not in tune with expectations and having good communication with your team, what this often leads to is bitterness within your team, burnout. I know, like, there's been such a movement now, like, we don't say burnout. Okay, cool. I get it.
Don't?
But like, like those things are real. Like, people leave the church bitter, people leave the church angry. And again, things can be even made for a season, but then it's not sustainable. So I think that this is where my heart breaks, is having seen so many friends or so many people I know leave ministry. And again, if God calls you out of ministry, cool. But if you're leaving bitter, mad, and like, you can't step foot into a church, that's a whole different conversation, right? So my heart breaks for those individuals and those, those situations, because oftentimes it could have been avoided with the conversations, with communication, with good expectations.
Absolutely.
Like that's where we need to get to. We need to get to a place where you're fulfilled where you're at, and God's moving and operating, and if that's you being faithful of 200, then be faithful of 200 and rock and roll. Or if God's called you to something different, then you're walking in that faithfully, with the right mindset, right context.
It's great, man.
But yeah, I think this is probably the crux of a lot of conversations that happen within church. I think we'll probably end up having more conversations kind of touching along the fringes of this conversation, but I think it's a kind of a good anchoring one for a lot of the ones going forward. Any kind of closing thoughts or things you want to?
No. I think we covered it.
Yeah.
Just be excellent in your context.
Come on.
Be excellent with what God has given you.
And that's enough.
Don't compare to what everybody else is doing. God has something for your house, for your team, for you as an individual, and like be good with that in this season. Yeah. And wring it dry for what this season is, so that you're not looking back when you get to the next season wishing that you would have gotten everything out of the one that you're already out of. So
when you say that, it obviously there's a parable that comes to mind, the parable of the talents.
Yep.
Right.
And it's like all that they were responsible for was what was given for them.
Yep.
They were, and it's the exact thing of like, if you're responsible with little, you're going to be responsible with much. And so it's just that if you were given one, you weren't expected to make it into 5. It was if you were given 5, then you were expected to make it 5. So again, just be in the context that you are, be excellent exactly how you said it, and that's the way to go.
it's great, man.
Hey, if you're watching this video, listening to us, and man, this bless you, or you're like, there's someone like, hey, they need to hear this. Do us a favor, share it with them. Share this video with somebody. Share this podcast with someone. If you're watching on YouTube, like it, subscribe to us, and comment below, because we really want to conversate with you guys and hear kind of different contexts that you guys are going through, thoughts and experiences that you guys have had. We don't want to just have like a one-way conversation. We want to have really build a relationship with you guys on different platforms, whether it's Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, wherever. But thanks so much for watching. If you made it to the end, drop a comment in. Let us know. Drop the word.
Like the video.
Drop the word Fantastic Four in the comments.
That's 2 words.
Fantastic Four, 1 word, no spaces. Fantastic, the number 4
Heard.
in the comments. Let us know what you made to the end. And we'll see you next week.